In the executive order, it talks about what we have to do as a school system, and I'm just going to scroll through the pages really where it gets in the crux on page 3. Is this part here that we have to put a plan together. The plan has to describe the policies and procedures we're going to follow as a district and the requirements. It talks about if Michigan is in phase 1, 2, or 3 of the Michigan Safe Starts, what we have to do as a district. The plan continues to go on if we're in phase 4, as well as phase 5. Now, there are currently 6 phases in the Michigan Safe Start schools. Phase 1, 2, and 3 are virtual. Schools are closed. Phase 4 is what we are currently in, which allows for in-person instruction. Phase 5, again, allows for in-person instruction with fewer restrictions. And phase 6 is, I call it normal, what we know school as where we were a year ago. In the executive order, it talks about some deadline dates. The first one is by August 15th. All school districts have to approve a plan. Our Board of Education approved the plan that I'm going to present to you today last night at their board meeting as a 7-0 vote. You will start hearing in the media, we've already heard it, but in the media for this week particularly, schools have to approve their plan by the 15th. So that's why you're going to start hearing a lot of the larger schools and that usually make the news being reported. The plan then goes from Richmond to the Macomb Intermediate School District, where our county superintendent, Mike DeVault, will then collect all 21 school districts' plans and then submit them to the state treasurer and the state superintendent for public education. So this is how we started. In the plan, or in the executive order, it references that school districts should be using the Michigan Safe Schools 2021 Return to School Roadmap. And so I'm not going to go over this document, but I at least want you to make you aware of it and how it's outlined. This document was put together by a team of individuals from across the state. On the beginning page, forward in the beginning pages, you can see who's all part of that team. But as you go through, it outlines what we need to do as a district in each phase. I'm going to go down to phase 4. You can see phase 3, because that's where we are at right now. Okay, sorry. There we go. So the document is laid out with several subsections: personal protective equipment, hygiene, instruction, transportation, food service, etc. And within each subcategory, there are requirements, and there are strongly recommended items, and there might be recommended items. In phase 4, we are required, in order to submit our plan, to follow anything that's deemed as a required item. In phase, if we choose not to implement a recommended or strongly recommended item in our plan, we have to identify that to the community, and why we're not, basically why we're not choosing to do that. In Richmond's case, our plan is we are pretty much doing everything that's required and recommended and strongly recommended. There are a couple cases in here that we are unable to do. The most obvious is the requiring 6 feet between students in the classroom. The physical nature of our classrooms prohibit that. There is not enough space in our classroom. Even if I could hire as many teachers as I want and spread kids out and lower class size to a point where we could spread students 6 feet out, there are not enough physical classrooms to operate and host that requirement. So again, I would strongly encourage parents to look through this. This is the basis that our team put together or used to put our plan together that was approved by the board last night. So let's go into the actual plan. What you will see is and again, I haven't had a chance to take off the pending because it was approved by the board last night. But the plan outlines, it looks like this. It then goes through and gives an introduction, again, basically how we got to this point, what documents we use. You'll notice across the top there are some color-coded squares, phase 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. As we start talking about the plan, there will be stuff written under each column that identify where we are and how we're going to operate based on the phase that we are in as a state. I'm most proud of the input. We've tried to gather as much input as possible from as many key players that will have the impact. We started the plan looking at the survey results we asked from our community in early to mid-June. We looked at the possibility of changing the start date, and was there interest in the community. We took that desire of parents that really wanted an in-person option as well as a virtual option, and we put together a plan. The plan that was approved by the board provides an option for families. They can either choose in-person or they can choose virtual. And we'll go over that in just a minute. But as you go through the plan, again, I'm not going to go through and read this entire document. It outlines, you can look at the table of contents for a specific item that you're looking for, whether it's protocol, how we're going to screen staff, the instructional aspects, what we do if we have possible cases, etc. But if you go down in the plan where the first part is the safety protocol, you'll see in phase 4, this is, anything in blue is what our plan is and what we're going to do. It is very thorough. It is very complete. And again, as you scroll down, you can see as we move from phase 4 to phase 5, you'll see the items that are in the plan under phase 5. There's a lot to read here, so I'm going to reference some summary documents of what you can expect as a parent. Again, going back to the website. Since we are in phase 4 and phase 5 are very similar, just fewer restrictions in phase 5, we created a document of kind of what to expect if you're selecting in-person instruction. So I'm going to go over these because this is really the crux of what our plan is and how we operate. But first and foremost, this has to be a partnership with parents and guardians at home. That's where it starts. We are going to work very closely with you to make sure all students and staff are safe in following our protocols and outlines, especially if we have a possible or confirmed case of COVID-19. But at home, we are asking and we are expecting parents to do a daily screening. Make sure their child doesn't have fever, cough, body aches, new or worsening cough, I should say, sore throat, lack of taste or smell, and so forth. Check their temperature. If they have 100.4 temperature or higher, do not send them to school. It only can do worse if we do this. So the first step is at home. The second step is as students get to school, whether they are riding the bus or whether they are by car or walking. If students ride the bus, we are maintaining a one route bus system, which means K through 12 students are on the bus. As students enter the bus, there will be a health screening. There'll be questions they got to double check again, making sure they don't have any of these symptoms at the top. There will be a device mounted on the bus that checks the temperature either by forehead or by wrist for the student. Anybody who has 100 point.
My computer, not yours. Ours.
If someone could mute their microphone just so we can don't hear the background, I'd appreciate it. There's this health screen, a temperature check. If someone has 100.4 temperature or higher, they will not be allowed on the bus. Students must wear a mask on the bus. You can wear one that you bring from home. If you have your own mask, you can wear one that we will be issuing, or if you forget both of them, we will have disposable masks to hand to make sure that every student has a mask on the bus. The other thing, if those that are riding the bus, windows will be down on the buses to promote air circulation. So if you're, especially in the early morning, you need to dress appropriately. It may be 90 degrees out in the afternoon, but in the morning it might be chilly with the bus windows, so you might need a sweater or coat. Again, it's to promote the air circulation for the students as well as the bus driver on the bus. So there will be multiple checkpoints on the bus. Students using hand sanitizer as they get on the bus to make sure that they any germs or anything that are on their hands. By car and walking are pretty similar. We are limiting when our buildings are open, so please do not arrive early. High school and middle school buildings will open at 7:30. Students will be allowed in the building at 7:30. We're trying to minimize congregations, maximizing social distancing between students. We don't want students gathering in the hallway in clusters and so forth. We want them to get in the building, either grab their breakfast or have their breakfast, and then get their stuff and go right to their classroom. If you're walking, if you're driving, we are asking you to please park in a parking spot. This is an ongoing issue that we have, and it's not necessarily due to COVID also, but we need for the safety of people to park in a designated spot. If you're walking, we're expecting parents to model and follow social distancing requirements. If you're waiting outside with your student, because maybe at the elementary school, because it's not yet 7:40 when the elementary building opens, keep the space and distance between you and the next family. And the most important thing, or I shouldn't say most important thing, probably the biggest thing or change is if you are not a district employee, you are not allowed in the buildings. We are limiting who has access to the building, who is coming in from the outside. Now, with that said, if you have a extenuating circumstance, such as you need to attend an IEP meeting that's an in-person, there's a medical condition that you have to attend with your child at school, those are reasons that we would allow people into the building. But volunteering, Friday folders and all that, volunteers are, if you're not a district employee, we are not allowing into the building. At school, in the classrooms, grades K-5 are not required to wear their mask in the classrooms. They can, though, if they choose to. However, all staff, K-12, will be required to wear facial coverings, which might be a mask, it might be a facial shield, but they are required to have that on at all times, with the exception of when they're eating. Desks in classrooms will be spaced out. Again, we are not able to do 6 feet, but we will space them out so that we can promote as much social distancing as possible. It is possible that for an activity, a teacher may move desks and turn them to complete the activity, but the intent is when it's done to push the desk back and keep them as far apart as possible. The other thing to realize, in the welcome back packet, parents will be notified that it is possible that the image of your student in the classroom will be captured on the camera system for those students that are virtual. The intent of the camera is to capture the teacher, the instructor, but if a student pops up or a student raises their hand, or as the camera is moving from location 1 to location 2 in the classroom, it could capture a student's image. It is possible that if a student comes up to the board and writes out a problem and answers a question like they would do normally in a classroom, that image is going to be captured by the camera, which for those at home, the virtual students, will only be allowed to see. In the lunchroom, we are spacing lunch tables out to fill the entire lunchroom. We will put approximately 2 to 3 students on the lunch bench at secondary level. It's more like 2 students per lunch bench. So it's basically every other spot in the lunchroom. While waiting in line for the lunchroom, there will be stickers or signs on the floor that say, stand 6 feet apart, do your part, to remind students to put that social distancing while they wait in line for the lunchroom. Facial coverings have to be worn to and from the lunchroom, but once students are eating, they do not have to wear the facial covering while they're eating. In the hallways and common areas, facial coverings and masks are required to be worn by all students and staff regardless of the grade. So if I'm a kindergarten classroom and I'm moving from the classroom, walking down to the lunchroom, everybody's required to wear a facial mask going from the classroom to the lunchroom. We are attempting to maintain, while they're walking in the hallways, that 6 feet of distance. However, it becomes challenging. If we have 25 students and you're marking them 6 feet apart, it's approximately 150 feet that line would be, and that's not necessarily practical. However, reminding kids to face forward, keep the distance between them and the person, as well as the teacher being able to manage the classroom as they're walking in the hallway, particularly with the lower L. In the hallways, you will see floor tape on the floors promoting the right side of the hallway as a one-way traffic. Students should not be congregating in the hallways, or they should be, when they go to their lockers, getting the stuff and then going to the classroom. Again, we're trying to minimize congregation and maximize social distancing as much as possible. In the common areas, drinking fountains have been turned off. We are encouraging students to bring water bottles, their own water bottles. There are some situations where the drinking fountains cannot be turned off because the plumbing line, if we turned them off in the drinking fountain, would turn off the water in the restrooms, and we don't want that to happen because we need them to wash their hands. So again, the drinking fountains are there are signs above that says do not use the drinking fountains as a common source and possible spread of the virus. Additional cleaning procedures here, you'll see we are moving some of our evening custodians to be during the day. There will be multiple times during the day that it's a scheduled disinfectant that's applied to doors, light switches, common areas that are touched by students and staff. Playground equipment, we will have a pump spray bottle that will spray over much like they do at Costco or Sam's where they spray shopping carts. We're doing a similar concept on the playground equipment. It will not be sprayed after every group, but we'll have it multiple times during the day. So when students go out of the classroom and come back, they're encouraged to use the hand sanitizer and wash their hands. Classrooms will be cleaned and disinfecting oftentimes during the prep periods of teachers throughout the day, because we will have fewer custodians in the evening, and the evening custodians will be more of a light clean and hallway disinfectant after everybody is gone. So we have taken a lot of precautions. As a district, we are ready to open schools from the perspective of we have the personal protective equipment. We have adult and children disposable masks. We have a cloth mask that says Blue Devils that we're issuing to every student. We have a lot of gallon hand sanitizer that will be placed in the classroom. If you recall, we took some of the wipes and the gallon hand sanitizer out of the classroom back in March because our emergency response personnel was requesting those when the virus first hit. We are replacing those. We have buckets of wipes that have 400 wipes in them that we'll be issuing to every classroom to be utilized and to maintain as much disinfecting as possible. It is the expectation of the district that students clean their areas. So at a high school classroom, the teacher may spray down the desk with a 1-to-10 ratio of a bleach water solution, and the students given paper towel to wipe down their area. Keyboards that are touched after they're done and so forth. They might be issued a wipe or cleaning solution or cleaning rag to wipe down in that disinfectant. They have not yet arrived. They should be arriving within about a week. We have ordered dividers that go between computer stations, so to provide some barrier as students are in a computer lab between computers. So this gives you a quick snapshot if you are choosing in person, what to expect. There is also a virtual if families are choosing virtual, because that is an option. Our virtual program is a live stream in the classroom. So what you are seeing in the virtual camera classroom system is what the students would picture in if they were actually sitting there. The camera is 100% controlled by the teacher. There are some pre-programmable safe spots that the teacher can utilize. Otherwise, the teacher has the ability, if there's a teachable moment in the classroom, to move the camera, zoom in, etc. So, virtual students. Now that the plan has been approved, anybody that has submitted an online request for a virtual form will be getting an email from me probably tomorrow stating that we know you're interested in virtual, and we're going to confirm it, and these are the next steps, and it will outline in that email based on the email address that was sent to us in that form. There will be, that's the virtual interests form, that's the first item. There'll be a virtual learning agreement form that must be signed. It is a part of the requirements of the pupil accounting rules for the state that everybody knows what's expected of them. So as a parent and student, if you're choosing a virtual option, you will know this is what the district's expecting for you to operate in a virtual setting. There will be, we're asking parents to commit, if you're choosing virtual, to commit to that for 5-week increments, basically progress report and end of the card marking. You know, it is, from a teacher perspective, teachers are designing their instruction both in person and virtual, and oftentimes it's going to be seamless between the two. But there may be situations that there's an activity that virtual students have to do, and in-person students might do something different just because of the nature of being in school or being virtual. We will provide a laptop and Wi-Fi for those families that need Wi-Fi, a hotspot often referred to, and laptop. If you have your own laptop, you are welcome to use your own laptop. The platform that virtual students must utilize is Schoology and Microsoft Teams. And so when you go through this option and you talk about what to expect at home, we're expecting students to log in from home. If I'm a secondary student in middle 6th through 12th grade, I would log in each hour. I would get the attendance would be taken by the teacher each hour. If you do not log in and you're marked absent, the school messenger robocall system will call and indicate that a student is absent. We are requiring anybody virtual, you are held to the same, I don't know why that says preschool handbook on there. I think we'll make that correction. But the student handbook, anything that is regarding the student handbook that applies to virtual also applies to the in-person, vice versa. If there is any technical issues, we are asking parents to contact us and let us know so we can work through it. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We're expecting students to follow the schedule. As I said, you log into first hour, you may hear the lecture or the discussion with the teacher first hour. Virtual students have the ability to listen to the discussion that's happening with in-person students, as well as in-person students can hear what virtual students are saying if they're called on by the teacher or discussing something or presenting something. Actually, I think I picked the preschool option here, that's why. Excuse me one minute. Let's go down here. There we go. Again, I mentioned about using Schoology. Schoology is the platform that everything will be put in. That's where your teacher assignments will be given. Students will return assignments virtually online, and so forth. Our expectation is students are engaged. They're part of the classroom discussion as if they were sitting in that classroom. We're expecting it to be, students to be respectful and courteous. You know, if there's things going on at home, that the mute buttons and all that are turned off so that that distraction is not in the classroom. And it's understand that classrooms may be recorded and the microphone is live at all times. So that's something that as a family, if you're choosing virtually, you need to recognize.
Damn it, John!
Interacting in the classroom, again, there is a camera mounted in the center of the classroom that captures 350 degrees of the classroom. It's movable by the teacher's control. Virtual students may see their in-person classmates by the camera moving around. You may see what that picture indicates. It could be a back of a head while the teacher's up in the front of the classroom. If a student called up to the smartboard or whiteboard in the classroom, virtual students will see that student writing out a problem or answering a question in the classroom. In-person students will only see the virtual students through Microsoft Teams if it's displayed on the whiteboard in front of the classroom, or if they are part of Microsoft Teams from their laptop. It's possible virtual students could be paired up with a student in class for partner work, small groups, etc. Again, there's microphones will be broadcasting the teacher voice. All our teachers will be wearing microphones around their neck. Those microphones capture not only their voices, but the students in close proximity to the teacher. So if there's a discussion going on and an in-person student is talking, if the teacher's in a close proximity, the person at home will be able to hear that conversation. Virtual students will interact with the teachers and students in the classroom, as we talked about. And the expectation is all the assignments, any videos, handouts are uploaded to Schoology, or vice versa, from the teacher to the student and from the student to the teacher. We have a lot of supports. If you are a virtual student and you received special education services or Title I, you will still receive those services if you qualify. If you are a virtual student and you want to participate in athletics and extracurricular, you are eligible to participate and be part of sports teams or clubs. For virtual students, we are offering a lunch option. If it's a pre-ordered, you turn your order in on Monday. We will have a pickup location, which is at the high school by door number 11, that you would pick up. You get your packaged meals, 5 breakfasts and 5 lunch for the next 5 school days. If you are a free student or pay a reduced cost, you would pay that reduced cost per day multiplied by the 5 days. Otherwise, it's $1.75 for breakfast and $2.75 for lunch per day. So that gives you some options from a virtual perspective and so forth. At this point, I'm going to talk about what to expect, because the issue is not going to be when or if, excuse me, that we have a possible or a confirmed case. It's when. And so in the plan, and I'm going to reference the document that we have in the back of the plan. If you go all the way to the end of the document, which is approximately on page 112-ish, sorry, right there, 112, it's our protocol that how we're going to respond if we have a possible case or a confirmed case. This protocol was developed and put out by the Macomb County Health Department and is being utilized by all 21 school districts in Macomb County. Again, if we have a possible case, this is what an administrator would pull out, and we'd walk through the symptoms, who the person was in contact with. In all classrooms, there will be an assigned class seating chart. In other words, so if someone tests positive in that classroom or is a possible, we know who has been in close proximity to that student. Throughout the document, you'll see within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes are kind of the guidelines that the health department put out. You'll see in here the document also talks about if we have a possible case for a teacher or a staff person, what we do. It also talks about if we have a confirmed case. If we do have a confirmed case in the district, parents and staff will be notified. We are not notifying if it's a possible case. It's only if it's a confirmed case. If it is a confirmed case, we have to protect the privacy of the individual through HIPAA and FERPA laws. So you will be notified that there's been a confirmed case. Now, this is where we have to do a lot of contact tracing to see how many people are affected around that confirmed case. K-5 classrooms are pretty much self-contained, or what we are calling cohort classrooms. They're staying together. They're not intermixing with other students in the building. Grades 6 through 8, with the changing of classes, they would be intermixing with students or having possible contact with students. And again, looking at students passing in the hallway, does that meet the within 6 feet and more than 15 minutes? But a classroom setting might. So there might be cases where if we have to quarantine or have a student stay home to be quarantined, that some students in the classroom are also quarantined because they were immediately around that student within the guidelines outlined by the health department. It could be a case where a class has to quarantine. It could be a case that a wing has to quarantine. each case is going to be different as we look at the uniqueness of the case. And I am extremely confident in the administrative team from the perspective of knowing how we're going to respond and being able to contact trace to the best of our ability using the systems we have. Teachers, like I said, will be having to create assigned seating charts. Lunchrooms will have an assigned area. The individual buildings will determine how, it might be where students, okay, pick where you're going to sit for the next, couple weeks. Once you're sitting, that's where you're sitting, and then we create a assignment or a seating chart at that point. Because if we have a confirmed case or even a possible, we're going to need to have access to who was around that student as quickly as possible so we can minimize any further spread. And then the document also talks about how we're going to contact trace. Throughout all of this, we are partners with the health department. The guidance that they provide us in terms of who, when, the guidance that whether we need to shut down classrooms or buildings, et cetera, would all follow coming from the health department. And then the last document on this page, or the last written document, is the process to return to school, whether you're a staff member or a student. Again, it outlines, all of these were developed by the Macomb County Health Department. There's signage that will be put up around the building about staying 6 feet apart. There's signs with the red X here, but will be placed on lunch tables to remind students not to sit there, to space out, not to use drinking fountains. Again, we're encouraging bring water bottles from home, water stores. Signs that will go on the doors to the buses to, if students have any of these symptoms, they are not allowed on the bus. Doors to the building, reminding in the bathrooms, reminding proper hand washing techniques, stopping and preventing the spread of the germs will be on classroom doors and throughout the building. Again, visual reminders that we all have to do our part. So with that, gives you an overview of the plan. I am now going to open it up to questions and answers about what individuals have, or if they have any questions. So you feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, and we'll go from there.
I was wondering, once some of the parents know that they have virtual learning, how soon can the student get their laptops?
It's a great question. Let me show you on the page here. Let's go back to this. Right here. This bullet right here. What we have developed for virtual students as well as all students is a plan of how we are going to distribute materials in the plan. So for instance, normally we do Blue Devil Days the week before school starts. We cannot do Blue Devil Days because of Phase 4 as we've done them in the past. We are not allowed to have that many people in a building. So what we've structured is on August 31st, September 1st, and September 2nd. That is the day designed for technology pickup and school-provided resource pickup for virtual students. We are asking that the virtual student and one parent or guardian come to the building. We will issue you the stuff, make sure all forms and documents are signed that need to be signed, that you are a virtual student. These are the items that are going to be talked about and gone over. We're going to make sure you understand that on our laptops, there's a software or a program called Safeware, which is a human monitoring software that allows for us to pick up inappropriate items are being posted or transmitted through the computer. We're going to talk about, if you're a virtual student, there are some etiquette that you need to be aware of in internet safety and cyberbullying. We're going to make sure that the students and the parents can access their OneDrive, which is the space that students save and access their documents. We're going to make sure parents know how to get into Schoology and that they can see themselves in Schoology and know how to maneuver the basics of Schoology. We'll also, during that time, while we're in Schoology, make sure everybody can click on the Microsoft Teams link and that we can actually operate and you can understand how Microsoft Teams works so you're ready to go. We'll outline your tech support. We have an online form that can be sent. We have a virtual option where we can log into computers remotely to try to assist you, as well as we have a telephone hotline that goes to our 3 technicians to be able to provide support, not only for in-person, but also at-home students. We're going to provide you information on the technology boot camp, which is what I'm going to talk about next, as well as make sure any documents we need for registration purposes are done. So plan on the week of August 31st, 1st, or 2nd, depending on if you're high school, middle school, and elementary school. We've divided it by grade level, again, to minimize the number of people. I'm anticipating these to be held in the cafeteria / gymnasium areas of the building so that we can space out, use the projection system. And our goal is by the end, when you leave that night, our goal is that you feel comfortable enough to be able to utilize Schoology and Teams, which is the platform that will need to be used for schooling. The first week of school, which school starts September 8th, both in-person and virtual students will participate in what we're calling a instructional technology boot camp within the classroom. And again, the details of this will be worked out by building and the staffs when they return August 31st. But every teacher will be working with the students in their classroom to make sure everybody knows how to use OneDrive, Schoology, and Teams for the classes they've been assigned. They'll understand if they have a problem logging in, what do they need to do. Again, they'll go over cybersecurity, internet safety, and etiquette. Again, it's going to look differently at every building. The middle school's been doing a boot camp for several years and have been really successful from the perspective of getting students ready and acclimated to the system. So now that the students have been acclimated and know how to use the system, we've taught our virtual online students as well as our in-person. Blue Devil Days have been moved to the following week, which will be September 14th, which will be virtual. And so we'll be utilizing Microsoft Teams to operate Blue Devil Days. So for secondary, you'll basically go through your child's schedule. When they go in first hour and everybody's logged into Teams, the teacher will again share their expectations, what's going to be taught in the classroom. I'm envisioning them being able to show you through Teams and by sharing the screen where things are in Schoology for their classroom, how the teacher is set up. But the one thing that what we have done this time versus the previous shutdown is the standard all teachers are utilizing is Schoology. Within Schoology is the vehicle that we're going to communicate back and forth, which is Microsoft Teams. We're not using multiple platforms and so forth. So as a parent, whether you have a 3rd grader or a 12th grader, we're using Schoology and Microsoft Teams. So good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Other questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now because originally I was planning on all the kids going back to school. Now my daughter's in high school. She might want to do the online. I heard from another parent that you were going to allow the first week of school that say if they come into school and it's just not for them. They don't like the masks, whatever, they want to do the virtual or vice versa. Do they have a week to kind of play with it and see what they want to do and then decide, or are they stuck the first day of school?
So typically the first week of school, so for us that would be through that Friday, September 11th.
Right.
Is when we are adjusting classes because we might have new students and we got to balance classes out, or at the secondary level, probably more at the high school than middle school, but it does happen at the middle school. We're changing classes, or a student got a class that they really don't want, and so forth. So at the beginning, we are allowing students to make the decision up through September 11th.
Okay.
So once you make the decision you could start off virtually and be fine, so if you start off in person and say, this isn't for me, or I've got any reservation, you have till September 11th. And at that point, then we're asking you to commit to it. I'm just looking at a calendar until I believe around October 9th-ish,
Okay.
which is when the progress reports typically are issued and so forth. And then you have a chance to move, either go back to in-person or go to virtual or stay virtual or stay in-person. So it's basically every 5 weeks from that point on, but we are allowing up through the first Friday of school. After that 11th, we're asking people to commit to the next 5 weeks.
Okay, no, that's fine, because my daughter, like, said she wanted to try, or at least maybe, come the first couple days, then she can kind of see her teachers and stuff, even though I know you're doing the Blue Devil days a week later, but, my little guy, he's with the masks, he's just not, it's not working for, at least they got that option. They got a couple days to play with that.
And I completely understand that, and that's why we're giving both options for families. What is as a family, what do you feel most comfortable with? I'll be honest with you, as you're hearing other districts announce they're doing 100% virtual. My recommendation, if there's any reservations on sending your child in person, my recommendation would be start off virtual. You can always come back to in person. And the beauty about the system that we're doing, and it's very unique to Richmond, is if you're a virtual student or an in-class student, you are part of an assigned classroom. You're building that classroom community. You're interacting with the students in your classroom. So if you're moving from virtual to in-person, you still have the same students you're interacting with. So
right.
It's a very unique situation, and I'll be honest, I'm extremely proud of the staff for what we've done and pulled together and making this option for families.
No, I appreciate it. No, I'm happy with options too, and like I said, I have no problem with sending them to school. They just, if, I know they go to school for learning, but the social aspect, and if a lot of their friends and peers are doing virtual, and if that's what they choose to do, so no, that works for me. Okay,
When school starts on September 8th, it will have been almost 6 months to the day that students were actually in class.
Right.
So that's a long time. So as a family, and that's our goal is, your student best. We're here to partner with you. If you have any reservations, I would strongly encourage you, call the building principal, talk to the building principal. They know their buildings. They've had a good relationship with families, or they have a good relationship with families, and you can work through what's in the best interest for your child. Other questions?
I have a question. Actually, I have a few questions. The first one about preschool. My daughter's going to be in 3-year-old preschool with no parents going to the building and not meeting the teachers first. Is there going to be any kind of adjustment period? I mean, are we just sending them in? Are they going to be confined to the classroom? Are they going to need their masks? What's the plan for them?
Okay, so on preschool, and there is on the website some kind of what to expect for in-person as well as virtual. The plan and the details, we're still finalizing how people are going to be picked up, dropped off, and so forth. But in general, the plan is, if I'm an in-person preschool, we're running it as we were normally, with as many social distancing in the classroom as possible. There may be centers that we might not be able to do because we've got to be able to sanitize and wipe down things between them. I'm not an early childhood expert. I don't claim to be. So I'm going to rely on the staff to provide guidance to me in how we roll that out. If they're choosing an in-person preschool, they're not going to be part of the class the entire time. There will be a camera in the classroom, and they'll be able to see what the teacher's doing and interacting. But so, for instance, if I'm a classroom teacher, or a preschool teacher, excuse me, and I'm reading a story, the students at home will see it just as they were in the classroom. But when the teacher says, okay, we're going to center time right now, the teacher may give the at-home preschooler, here's some activities to do at home while we have centers, and then the camera shuts off, and now the in-class students are doing their center. So it's a reduced amount of time the preschool student is engaged with the in-class student, just because of the age. We're talking 3- and 4-year-olds here. And even when we get to kindergarten, that's going to be, there's going to be some time where the camera may not necessarily, the student may not always be in the classroom because they're doing centers or going out to recess and so forth. As far as meet the teacher and that transition, because as we know, when you're passing off your student to a teacher they may not have met, there's a lot of anxiety and so forth, both from a parent as well as a student. I would envision that there's some outside weather permitting activities that we're not just at 7:50 taking the students and going in the classroom and closing the door on the parent. I'd imagine there's some things that are going to be planned for the outside. The details have not been finalized on that aspect. But all that will be communicated when the welcome back packets go out for preschool as well as K-12 families, which we typically send those out would be around the week of the 24th is when that welcome back students' assignments, what teachers they have, etc. So I don't know. I didn't really answer your question because I don't have the specifics on how that's going to look at this point. I'm going to rely on the working with the administrative team and teachers to say, okay, let's plan this out of how it's going to look so it can be the easiest transition for families and students.
Can I add to that, Mr. Walmsley, if you don't mind?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. So just so you know, in a regular typical preschool day, we typically have the parents outside with the students anyway, so that's good news. We've kind of, I don't want to say perfected that, but there's all those good kisses and hugs and goodbyes, and sometimes we do have to do the peel off method and things like that. It's very stressful on all the students if we were to have all parents and students, even in the hallways or in the classrooms. It's just overwhelming and overstimulating. So we typically do that kind of outside drop off. Now we have the parents, we'll call them and let them know how the child's doing, or the parent may hang around outside and the aide or myself can go out and let the parent know that the child's settled down, not crying anymore, those types of things. So just please know that that's what we're used to doing, and that's a transition no matter what. So we're not just gonna leave your child, crying, and we're gonna be safe and love your child through the transition. So did that help at all?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we were just gonna, send them on in by themselves, or what, have an older student take them to their class, or
Yep. There's always a teacher, aide, and then myself outside. So usually it's a very, very long process in the beginning, familiar faces, getting to know how it kind of looks, and things like that. The first week is a little bit of a transition. It's tricky, but it's what we typically do. Pre-COVID is that the students line up with the parents and they kind of follow their peers. They get into a line, and like I said, it's tricky at first, but it really does work out well. I see Miss Finney and some other preschool past parents on here. So you have a lot of support, and we'll take care of your child.
And we we do start preschool the 9th, which is Wednesday. So we get the K-12 and the elementary K-8 or 3, excuse me, kind of the anxiety in that first day over with them, and then we focus on the preschool the next day. So as Mrs. Manguni said, we're trying our best to create that environment. Again, I would envision that at 7:50, the teacher's going to say, okay, let's go in. And there's some transition. There's some let's make sure parents and students feel comfortable with that teacher, but at some point we are bringing the kids in to the classroom and trying to get them ready for what they're going to experience the rest of the school year.
Okay. And are the 3-year-olds going to be required to wear a mask?
No, in the classroom they are not required to wear a mask. They have to wear a mask in the hallways of moving from point A to point B, but in the classroom, no. And preschool, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Manguni, sorry. They're other than going out to recess, they're primarily in their classroom. There's not a library might look a little differently when they go down to library, but that doesn't start till a couple weeks into the school year. So.
Yep, absolutely. So it's really just going out to recess, whether that looks like outside or in the big gymnasium. And we already have plans, and we're talking about making it encouraging and fun, and using rewards and positive behavior for the mask. So we're not looking at it as we're not going to look at it as a negative. We're going to look at it as something we can turn into a positive, because we understand the kids are young and it's going to be new, and the teachers are going to model it, and we're going to put stickers on them, and we're just going to make it as fun as possible given the circumstance.
Okay, sounds good. And then I have one more question not related to preschool, about the buses. Last year on my kids' bus, there was 3 kids in every seat. Has there been more buses added to the routes, or have they been modified at all, or?
There was a conversation regarding the bus, so we looked at doing a 2-tiered bus system. I'll start with this. Whenever you're adding a bus, it takes at least 6 months from the time a district places an order till the time you get a bus. And it's actually longer because there's a lot of delays in some of the products to go into making a bus. But it's a 6-week time frame. So 6-month time frame. So buses for this year, buses had to have been ordered in March, end of February, March, to get them here at the beginning of the school year. Now, with that said, we have buses. We have spare buses that we utilize that if we need to bring them on the route. The second challenge we have is getting bus drivers. You drive around anywhere in Macomb County or Oakland, you're going to see every district is looking for bus drivers. And so we have a very limited pool of people who can drive and actually perform that function. The board looked at, or at least had a discussion. I presented to them that it's possible we could do a two-tiered system. And in the two-tiered system, we would put elementary on one run and middle school and high school on a second run. But they would start at two different times. So for instance, middle school and high school might have started at 7:30 and elementary might have started at 8:30. And then they get out an hour difference at the end. In a two-tiered system, based on the current drivers we have, we cannot guarantee that we could reduce the bus load below 2/3 on average. So if a normal bus has 77 passengers, 2/3 is about 50 students on a bus. That's still at least 2 kids to a seat on a bus. And that's making the assumption that we could do it. It would affect parents who have kids in multiple buildings, childcare arrangements, and so forth. And so the conversation was, with everything going on right now, we don't think it's good to change the bus system. So we're maintaining a one bus system route. We have 11 buses that are out on the route. We have 11 drivers and 1 substitute. If we can get more drivers, we can add, I believe we have two extra buses that we could put in the fleet. But the challenge is getting bus drivers. So as of today, the bus route will stay the same as it did last year. There might be some changes based on enrollment changes and where people live, but they're still putting up to 77 passengers on a bus if it's designed to be a 77 passenger bus.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll be honest with you, I'm encouraging parents, if you can, and I know it creates more traffic in our parking lots and so forth, to drive during this time, if you can arrange with maybe neighbors over, to do carpools to minimize, because as kids get on the bus, we're going to do the screening, we're going to do the temperature check, we're going to issue masks, and we're doing the sanitizer, windows down, but there are still 60, 70 kids on a bus. We currently have, as of last night, we have 170 families that have put in for the online option. Depending on where they live, that could reduce the number of students on a bus too, which will help some. Won't help all, but it will help some.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Other questions?
Good morning. I have a question.
Yes.
For virtual school students, if we utilize school laptops, will firewalls be disabled so we can use our printers at home? With the current firewalls, we can't add our own printers, and that created some complication for the distant learning at the end of the year.
I do know, in talking with our IT, he has a solution to do for printers at home.
Perfect.
I don't know the technical terms and all that, but that was one thing that he was working on this summer, to be able to create a solution for families to access printers at home.
Okay, that works great. And then headsets supplied by the school for the virtual students, or should parents purchase those ahead of time so that it'll help with some of the, the other noise in the household while they're logged into class?
Something that, and unless it came up in our discussion, that's the first time I heard that, and so it's a very good idea. I'm going to write it down, and I will get back with you. I would say at this moment, we did not plan for headsets, but let me talk to the team and see where we're at. If that's something that from a instructional perspective, as you said, to reduce the noise, we will look into. So thank you for
as a mom that has done virtual schooling for many years with the kids, I can tell you it makes a huge difference,
Okay.
especially for the families that are going to have multiple students at home. Otherwise, you're going to get that cross reference between each student. You know, not many families have the capability of having a house that would allow for, you know, multiple schoolrooms or multiple different areas to reduce that noise, or just the noise of a typical, you know, family being at home doing other things such as laundry and things like that.
Well taken. I'm writing it down in our list that I've been gathering as we've done these meetings.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are these Zoom meetings recorded and available on the website?
They are. Here's what, on the previous meetings, I have the files that I sent to Jason Robbins is converting them today for me. This one I'm recording and the one that I did on Saturday, and he's going to send them back to me so that they are on the website. I will show you just real quickly. If you go to the website on that page, here's some audio of those, but I will have the video put up. I'm sending today, and then I'll have the other two links for today's meeting and Saturday's meeting. So
Okay, cool.
it's just
Thank
logistically,
you.
I have to get with Jason to convert it into the format that we need for our website.
Okay, great. Thanks.
No problem.
I have a question.
Yes.
If my child is in person and they come into contact with someone who's sent home for those 14 days, how do they get their education for those 14 days?
We would move them to a virtual setting so that they can continue learning at home.
So they would get the same options as all the online virtual students are getting?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And from a big picture, you know, not that, you know, if we ever had to suspend a student, this virtual option allows the suspended student at home to still get the education but not be in school. Or you have a student that's homebound or sick. So the positiveness of what we've put in place really applies to multiple aspects of what we deal with at the school system every day. But the intent is if a student is quarantined, that they would be at home and now become a virtual student for the time they're quarantined so they aren't missing out, which is why we're doing the training the first week of school for all students so they know. We could be come in a week, the governor, or in about a week, the governor could say we're all moving to phase 3 and everybody's virtual. So we're trying to be ready at any moment the state moves to a different phase. And as you explained, if we have to quarantine certain students, they would just simply move from in-person to a virtual option, and so they wouldn't be behind the other students.
Okay, and then if I have two students in the same building, let's say middle school, are you offering a second time for me to do like meet the teacher with that other student teachers?
You know, let me talk to the team about that, because that's the logistics that we're working out for the Blue Devil days, the times. And again, the final plan we'll be put in your welcome back letter that goes home on the 24th. But tentatively, that's where we're looking. So let me talk to the team and how that would be responded. So 2 students at middle school and following the schedule. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
Is there a plan for pictures, not necessarily for just personal pictures, but for school IDs or anything like that, for lunches and etc.?
We have to work out with we have not finalized that plan. Yeah. For the lunch program, we don't necessarily need pictures for the cards. We have the ability that we could take them in-house. It wouldn't be, you know, the nice pictures they've gotten, but for IDs. But that logistic is one of the items that we still have to work out with the team. When I say
Gotcha.
team, I'm looking at the administrators at each building, because it's unique to, you know, how we do it at the elementary school is very different than how we do it at the high school, and the purposes of badges, as well as you know, the secretarial staff that's involved too. So that came out on Saturday's meeting, so I do have that on the list to finalize that plan.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question in regards to latchkey.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable, so I don't do morning bus. My son always did afternoon bus. I'm not quite comfortable putting him on a bus where it's kind of overcrowded, my per se 3 kids per seat. Now, is the latchkey still going to be available for afternoon? And if so, would he be having to wear the mask the whole time, or what would the protocol be for latchkey programs?
Latchkey is available before and after school. They would qualify for the protocol as we would for elementary school. Now, with that said, we have to look at the latchkey facilities. Part of the reason is because of the construction that's going to begin. You may have noticed if you've driven by the elementary school, many of the exterior doors where the additions are being put on have been boarded up, and we have temporary egress hallways that were built in the building. So we may have to move latchkey to a different site in the building for an entrance and exit. And if that's the case, then we gotta look at that site. If it's a large room, and let's just say hypothetically, it's the cafeteria gym and we have parents coming in the door by the cafeteria, or maybe it's the gymnasium that we're using. Because of the large setting, depending on how they're interacting, they may have to wear masks in that setting, because now we're mixing kids, where we're not keeping the cohort of students as they were in kindergarten
Right.
through 5th grade. So we have Mr. Coach, is it tomorrow, or Ms. Napier, or Napier, maybe it's tomorrow, we're doing the preschool latchkey or conversation. So we'll know more after that meeting, because we have to physically walk the building, look at from a licensing perspective, can we still use the same room? Our plan is to spread students out so that there's minimum number of kids in the room. So and they've used in the past multiple classrooms when we have latchkey settings. It's just, are we physically still going to be able to do that, or do we have to relocate and have parents enter the building to get their students from latchkey or drop them off at a different spot? So I will have more information to be able to put on the website, and I'll make a note that we're going to add a latchkey setting for parents so we can get that information out there.
Okay. And then my other question would be is, should everything, knock on wood, go as planned and we do start the in-person, but then we do get shut down, would there be like a little bit of a grace period before like the virtual would be then starting up? Because I'm an essential, so I'm coming into an office every day. I would have to try and figure out how I would get my son to start the virtual, whether I have to hire somebody to come to my house and get him to come, or am I gonna have to bring him here to work with me and set up a desk? Is there like a little grace period? Should we start physical, then we get shut down and move to full 100% virtual? Is there gonna be, or is that gonna be like 2 days, then you start right up into your virtual again? Has that been kind of thought about?
I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. Number one, if we're shut down, we have to follow whatever the executive order is. And typically in the past, when Governor Whitmer announced that we were shut down in March, we were given a 2 days notice.
Right.
And it became extremely challenging because we had never shut down and never had to operate that way. I'm a lot more comfortable now as an organization that we are capable of doing quality instruction in a virtual setting. With that said, if we're shut down, if she moves us from phase 4 to phase 3, there has to be a time that we are able to respond, because we're going to have to be able to issue laptops to those that were in person and move them to virtual.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to provide some support and some training for families so they can get used to using the system. So I would envision there is a delayed period that if we're shut down, we're going to be back up and running at a certain point in time. How long that is, I don't know. It's going to depend on, I think, when that decision's made. For instance, if the governor makes the decision at the end of the month on August 31st and we've had no chance to work with anybody, we're going to have a little bit of delay because we got 1,500 students that we have to get ready for virtual. We're still going to use the Schoology and Teams and that system, but we got 1,500 students to bring up and families to get ready. If she makes the decision after the first week of school, let's get through the first week. We experienced with virtual, all in-class kids have now been trained on how to do it, and she makes the decision to move us to phase 3. I could see that potentially being a shorter window, with the idea that the window is really for families to adjust and get ready for no in-person learning. So I guess it's going to be dependent on the timing. I said this over and over in the previous meetings, and I'll say it again. The conversations you have with your classroom teachers and the principals, we will be accommodating. We will work with families because we understand. I mean, I look at our own staff. If we're shut down, many of our own staff have kids of their own that they now have to figure out, okay, what I'm teaching, but I also have my kids at home that I have to provide a virtual platform. And so we've got to be able to work through that. And it may be an individual case basis.
Okay.
We will have the flexibility to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a quick question. I just want to make sure, because I jumped on a few minutes after you started. These plans are what is in place right now. There's not a plan that needs to be approved or is going to be approved that it is going to go fully remote at this current point in Richmond.
No, the board last night voted that they are, the plan that's on the website is what they voted for, which will provide parents an option. You can choose an in-person or virtual. We are planning instruction for in-person kids beginning September 8th. The only
and it's 5 full days a week?
Yes, 5 full days a week. It will run like a normal school day. The 8th is a half day. We're following the calendar that's on the website.
Yep.
The 9th through the Friday the 11th is full day. If they're in person, you know, they will be meet the teacher. They will be going classroom procedures. Teacher will be teaching them. The only thing that can trump this is if the state shuts down schools and says everybody has to be virtual.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Our district just moved kind of fully remote last night on a whim. So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't something that still needed to be voted on by the Board of Education.
The board voted last night 7-0 to support this plan, which is in person and virtual.
Okay, great. I appreciate the option so much. As a working teacher mom myself, I totally appreciate this and I'm very excited. So thank you for all the endless effort and time that I know goes into making these plans.
It was a team effort, and a lot of thought went into it. And I can say from my seat as watching the process, all the conversation has been truly about what's in the best interest for families and our students.
Well, I absolutely appreciate that. It definitely shows. So thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions?
Hello, what is the deadline? What is the deadline for having to make a choice of either in person or virtual?
100 times, the 11th.
What we are for the beginning of the year, the final deadline is September 11th. Remember though, the week of the 31st is when August 31st, 1st and 2nd is when virtual families are getting their laptops. If there's textbooks we have to give students.
That's when you have to figure it out.
So we are asking, I would recommend, and this is just a parent to parent, if you're thinking virtual, I would recommend you make that option by the 28th, the week before that Friday, so that you can come to those virtual meetings. So you can get the stuff, you can learn the system. With that said, if you're planning on in-person and all of a sudden on September 11th, you know, that's not going to work, we will move you to virtual on September 11th. But from a training perspective, getting the materials, if you could be there at the August 31st or September 1st or 2nd meeting, that would help out us, you, the student, etc. Other questions?
Go sit down.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the school supply lists that are currently online, are those going to be updated at all with the district providing wipes and things? Are the parents still going to have to try and find Clorox wipes themselves?
That's a good question. The district has ordered and has received half of the order. We have purchased for every classroom teacher, it's a bucket of 400 wipes, and we've got several buckets that we've ordered. I believe we have, I know the total dollar value is about $20,000 worth of wipes, because wipes are not cheap anymore. I would envision that classroom teachers may ask still on their list if you can provide wipes. We do recognize wipes are, there's a shortage out there. They're like gold when you go to the grocery store and you see them. Sometimes you stock up with whatever they can give you on the limit. So we are providing wipes for the classroom. It's like a half-gallon bucket that has 400 wipes in it, so that we can, kind of got a little dispenser on it, so that so teachers have the ability to wipe down things in the classroom. We're also providing the spray bottles and pull out paper towels so that you can wipe down, spray the desk and wipe them down, so you didn't have to necessarily use a wipe on that one. But I would envision that teachers may still ask for wipes in the classroom, just if we can do it. We do recognize wipes are a challenge to find. But we did provide wipes for classroom teachers, or we are providing wipes for classroom teachers.
Okay, and are masks, like cotton masks and stuff, going to be required for parents to also purchase, or are we going to try and just do the disposables?
We have, as a district, we are providing every student with a cloth, and I don't have one on there on my desk here. It's a Blue Devil mask that we're giving every student, as well as we have thousands of disposable masks. We have over 70,000 adult masks, which are for middle school and up, and then we're actually picking up today about 66,000 lower elementary school disposable masks. So we have estimated enough masks for, if we had to give 2 per student, to get us through November.
Okay.
At this point. Now we will be ordering more as things deplete, and we get better sense of how long we're going to be in phase 4 or phase 5, etc.
Okay.
We are providing masks, but if a student has their own, if they have their own, and forgive me, I don't have little kids, but if there's a mask that has a little character on it that they love, they are welcome to use their own mask. They do not have to use the one provided by the district. If they have a, I'm probably dating myself here, a Pokemon or something like that, they can wear that. The one thing we are asking in the plan, you'll see that the expectation is, if they are washable masks, the expectation is parents are washing them daily. We are not asking kids, did you when they walk in the morning, did you wash your mask last night? We're expecting that the parents are partnering and sending their kids with a clean mask.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I did have one more quick question on that kind of idea of supplies. With the supplies that parents are bringing in, is it going to be strongly encouraged that each kid has their own container or somehow case of supplies that they will be utilizing? Is there going to be any direction given per grade level, or can you speak to that at all?
Yep. In our plan, we talk about supplies and the stuff that students are using. We are our guidance to staff is students use their own supplies. So if your child brought in crayons and pencil, they are the only ones using that supplies. It's their supplies in a box. And I'm kind of being broad, because whether it's kindergarten or whether it's 6th grade, they operate a little differently. But if I bring in the supplies, I'm only using my supply. If there are common supplies, like maybe at the high school they do graphing calculators, and a lot of times they're hanging on a shoe holder on the wall that they put all the graphing calculators. When the students are done, we're asking them to be wiped down and be put back in there. So common supplies, we're trying to minimize common supplies.
Okay, so do you think at the elementary level, because like I'll have a kindergartner and a third grader, those teachers will maybe specify if they want like a pencil case or maybe some type of like plastic container with a lid, or just so that we kind of know as we're purchasing these items what to place them in to send them to school?
I don't mean to put Mrs. Manguti, Mr. Kosha on the spot. What's your thought on that one? I mean, you know your staff. I'm anticipating that because we are promoting they're using their own supplies. So we have a.
Yeah, I would say that's going to be the teacher's discretion, but most of them are going to want to have individual supplies so students aren't sharing anything. But if they do share anything, like the plan says, we will disinfect after each use.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
The guidance, whether you're in a kindergarten class or the high school, is we are going against what we typically do, that we have kind of common supplies and shared supplies. We're in a situation we want kids to keep their own stuff, have their own contact, to minimize any potential spread. And so to do that, we've got to have students have their own. So whether it's a pencil box that they keep it together, or at the secondary level, keep your supplies in your backpack and whatever, because we're going to have to change some of our policies that are current. Like, for instance, those students that have lockers at the secondary level, if your locker is an odd number, you're only going to be allowed to go to your locker after odd hours. If you're an even locker, you're only going to be able to go to your locker after even hours. So a student's got to be able to plan for 2 hours of the day and bring the materials with them, because we're trying to create as much social distancing as feasible given the environment that we operate in. Schools were not designed for social distancing. That goes against everything in our grain of being. So. Any other questions?
This isn't a question, but maybe a suggestion for the mask, so the younger kids don't put them down on the desk or pick up another kid's mask. They can wear lanyards and put them around their neck so they don't lose them.
That was brought up on Saturday's meeting, and we are looking into, I have my office looking into, we haven't discussed it as an administrative team, the possibility of creating a lanyard that a mask clips to, so if they take off the mask, it kind of just falls and it's still hung on the lanyard. We have to make sure they're breakaway lanyards for safety, so that if they, nobody gets hurt or strangled on it. But that was an idea that was brought up on Saturday, so we did write that down to further investigate. So, well, I will close with this. My phone, my email, as well as the building principals, is always open. If something comes up, please email us, contact us. We are here to work together. It's not about, we are going to do everything we can to minimize it. We're going to do everything we can to make sure students are safe. Our facilities are sanitized on a regular scheduled basis. But this is a partnership. We need to work together with the families and how students get sent to school, to if we have to send someone home, that we have the partnership with the families to come pick them up and recognize it. So we're going to do everything we can, and I am confident that our staff is committed to making sure not only students but the staff themselves are safe. So with that, I thank everybody for joining in, and have a great day.